Greetings, one and all, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles podcast on a Friday afternoon. Wulf, Zach Berman, joined by Deniz Selman, the professor, back for the second week in a row. Lots to talk about as we get into this Eagles-Cowboys matchup. We'll probably save about 5 minutes for that after we talk about the Christian Elliss fiasco for the first, 55% of the show, or I guess 55 minutes of the show, rather. Zach, how are you?
I'm doing well. A professor and a priest walk into a studio, right? I feel like there's a punchline to come. But
you work on that punchline
as a fan of comedy. But no, it's great to be here with you after your performance yesterday. That was heard all around the internet, and always good to see
all around the NovaCare complex. It sounds like
yes.
Lots of questions for Nick Sirianni today,
and always good to see Professor Selman and ready for good, nuanced, informed discussion of a huge Eagles-Cowboys game. I actually saw, I believe it was Chris Canty said it's the biggest regular season game of Dak Prescott's career. So, when there's that type of hyperbole, this is a big game. And looking forward to discussing it.
And Chris Canty would know a lot about big regular season games. So,
yeah, what a weird.
Chris Canty is quite an accomplished player. He won a Super Bowl.
No, it's just because you went to UVA. Now, you guys should be talking Charlotte
for a classy organization. By the way, he won the Super Bowl, the New York Giants.
Well, we're all very happy for him. We've got a studio audience today, Zach. You got a chance to meet Mr. Steve Wulf before the show.
Yeah, they
after all these years, where I'm finally introducing you to the parent.
Awesome to meet him. I say this sincerely, like a big 10-year-old Zach would be awestruck. 37-year-old Zach is still awestruck, but I've known Bo now for a long time, and so I can see where the talent comes from.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about that. But we're all awestruck to be here with Deniz, and we've got a lot to talk about. We'll play Goose Wisely at the end as well, and give you our crystal ball Deagle predictions. But let's send it to the Stone Cold Newsman first, Zach, because there is some news from the NovaCare complex, and after that we can continue to unpack the Christian Elliss thing.
So jokes aside and bits aside, the Christian Elliss situation did not work out the way the Eagles anticipated. After the show, a few hours after the show, Christian Elliss did not clear waivers. He was claimed by the New England Patriots. And had he not been claimed by the New England Patriots, there were 5 other teams who put in claims.
6 teams
who put in claims to get him.
Including the greatest football mind ever, Bill Belichick. The consensus best defensive coordinator in football, and Vic Fangio. One of the great linebackers of our era, Mike Vrabel. The defensive coordinator of last year's Super Bowl losers, Jonathan Gannon. I mean, these are some of the smartest people in football who are claiming Christian Elliss.
I think you could have just called him last year's Super Bowl loser.
Jeez, you can never resist a shot. But
Sean Payton, another one of the great coaches of this era.
Look, I respect the bit and respect your commitment to the bit, but this is something relevant to the Eagles in that Christian Elliss played the most special team snaps for the Eagles this season. He's played 78% of the special team snaps, as you said in your monologue yesterday. It was more like a soliloquy than a monologue, actually.
It was a sermon.
As you said in your sermon, that there was that's the unit that's actually playing best for the Eagles right now. This is a guy who's been a leader for that unit, so that is a void. The Eagles expected Christian Elliss to clear waivers. His locker was clear today. He's off to New England. He did not clear waivers, so now the Eagles are going to have to figure out how to replace him on special teams. So we'll get to that discussion. Also in the news, Darius Slay, who missed practice on Wednesday, Thursday, back on the practice field today. We'll probably find out his status during the show, but I'm expecting him to play. I would watch out for Julio Jones. He was out there today, but he's missed time, so we'll see what happens with his injury status.
Watch out for him in what sense?
whether he plays or not.
Okay.
He might be.
Julio's coming.
Julio's coming.
I don't know about this weekend though, but he will be there, right? And then otherwise, pretty clear from an injury perspective. Dallas Goedert has been a full participant. He will play, and I would just watch out. I'm curious if there's a practice squad elevation. If Brandon Smith maybe gets elevated, given that he's really the only linebacker that they have. If they want that body type, they could go with like Mekhi Garner, who's played special teams for them. But there is a void on special teams. I asked Nick Sirianni today how they're going to replace him, and he mentioned Ben Van Sumeren. But the reality is Ben Van Sumeren played the most special team snaps last week of any player, right? So Van Sumeren has already been a part of the special team. So it's who's going to take Christian Ellis' spot. I'm very curious to see.
So a few things here. First of all, let's talk about Brandon Smith quickly, because a great article that you had on All PHLY today.
Thank you.
Asking guys about who is flashing for them on the scout team. Devontae Smith, who we've talked about as like a reliable narrator before, he called out Brandon Smith, your boy.
Yeah. Clearly, Brandon Smith has made an impression on Devontae because he's not even covering Devontae. He's a linebacker, right?
That was one of the only answers that was not just like the guy that you go up against.
Yes. And when I spoke to, I'll give a little behind the scenes here. When I spoke to Devontae Smith, Brandon Smith was still relatively new to the Eagles. So Devontae didn't quite know his name yet, identified him by appearance and college. Okay. And then I was able to fill in the blanks from there. You give me the description in the college, I say, oh, Brandon Smith. But Brandon Smith was also mentioned, I believe, by DeAndre Swift as well. So Brandon Smith's the only other linebacker on the practice squad. From that story, two quick things that I would say. AJ Brown, if you haven't sold your Keely Ringo stock yet, read AJ Brown's description of him. And AJ Brown was excited to share that he thinks Keely Ringo needs to kind of put this together and realize the tools that he has, but thinks there's all pro potential if he puts those tools together. And then
a little aggressive.
A lot of Moro Ojimo love. The offensive linemen who I think are reliable narrators are they speak highly of Moro Ojimo. The reason I like that story.
The one thing that they are not always reliable narrators on is any edge rusher who tries hard. It's true. Like it's it was Joe Osman once upon a time. It was Stephen Means, like Lane Johnson talking about riding a bull. Stephen Means, like that's the one thing where it's like, okay, the fact that this guy's trying is making an impression. Yeah,
but I always think players know. Sometimes the players see the trees and the coaches see the forest, right? So the players can be reliable evaluators of like other players more so sometimes than coaches can be, because coaches see them for kind of what they want them to be. It's probably similar. We have greatness in the studio here. I always think like
that's right. Julia is producing the show.
I always think if you want to know who's good on the beat, don't ask the editors, ask the writers, right? Ask the people who are there with them every day. So.
Yeah. Some writers don't read other writers.
That is true. That is true.
Okay. Let's talk about Christian Elliss.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think that the special teams part of this is not the most important part. I don't think that is the biggest mistake that they made here. There are two things, right? They could have either expected him to clear waivers and been wrong about that, been very wrong. Then they really misread the league because 6 teams claimed him, or they were just fine losing him, and that's, whatever. Maybe that's their call. Special teams, they will find a way to make up that production. I think Deniz and I actually have talked offline about
flex.
Like Christian Elliss was not making as much of an impact on special teams this year as he did last year.
Yeah, I mean, if people remember, he was promoted to save the special teams last year. The special teams DVOA was like, they were like 28th.
Yeah.
I remember you had an article about how it's okay that the special teams is bad because they haven't invested in it, like right around that time.
By far the youngest in the league.
Right.
Yep.
And then Christian Elliss was the big promotion to the roster to save the special teams.
But it worked.
And like starting that week, like from then on, if you just did DVOA from then, they were like top 3 the rest of the season. So yeah, and we were not seeing that this year.
Right.
Yeah.
But defensively, now they are in a position where this is a team that is expecting to play into late January. They have 3 playable linebackers on the team: Zach Cunningham, Shaq Leonard, and Nicholas Morrow. All guys who are old and have been injured.
So you don't consider Van Sumeren a playable linebacker?
I mean, that is a big stretch. You're going to tell me that he's more ready to play on defense than Christian Ellis is? I mean, if that's their call, that's fine. I think that's a little bit wild. Meanwhile, Alberto, and we're not I don't need to kill Alberto here, but now that you're getting Dallas Goedert back, he is the fourth tight end. They don't Jalen Hurts doesn't throw to the second tight end, let alone the fourth tight end. He doesn't have any time left on his contract.
Yes, exactly.
And they already have Tanguy on the practice squad. So if you waive Alberto and some team claims him, which is not a guarantee at all, then all of a sudden, okay, your worst case scenario, 2 injuries at tight end is Noah Tanguy. That's fine. It's not a big deal. Meanwhile, if there are 2 injuries at linebacker now, Ben Van Summer's going to have to be on the field. So it's wild.
So 2 half-baked takes here that I've heard just, in the media room and asking around. I'm curious your guys' opinions on these. And we are spending a lot of time on Christian Elliss. This is fun. This is on brand. First being that, and I should preface this by saying they definitely thought they were going to get him through, or they definitely hoped they would get him through waivers, not just because Nick Sirianni said this, but if you just look at the timeline of events, when they agree to terms with Shaq Leonard on Monday and they don't make the transaction until Wednesday, the reason you delay a transaction is you think, because by that point a team's not getting him until Thursday, teams don't usually make waiver claims late in the week because you don't really get that acclimation thing.
If they thought that was that was going to work, they deserve what they got.
But so here's 2 half-baked theories for you. Number one, as nominal,
this is all game theory here.
As nominal trade as it was, or as insignificant a trade as it was, a theory that was floated out to me that they can't cut Alberto because they surrendered an asset for him, and so there's a saving face.
If that's true.
Then the second half-baked theory, and this one's going to make you laugh, and I always like making you laugh, okay, is that we all remember the Mario Goodrich move.
Yeah,
to get the number for Kevin Byard, that Shaq Leonard came in, wore number 50. They waived Christian Elliss. He gets his 53 back. They're not allowed to change numbers during the season. Nick Sirianni was actually asked on his WIP hit on Tuesday if Shaq Leonard would be able to get his 53. He said there's actually rules against that during the season, but he stays out of that. So you do wonder, is this part of placating Shaq to get him his 53?
Honestly, I think that's the most reasonable explanation because we talked about he could have just come in and been on the practice squad.
Yes,
that wouldn't change anything for him. I feel like it in the weeds of the negotiation for which team he's going to choose, there's some demand that he's going to be on the active roster and he's going to be number 53. Doesn't that make
right?
sense?
I mean, he easily could have done what other veterans have done, which
such
is
as Julio Jones.
Julio Jones.
And
he's got
that buys you 3 weeks, right? But in those 3 weeks, Julio's groin would probably give out and he'd go to IR or whatever, and the roster spot would open anyway, right? And
Future Hall of Famer catching a stray.
Yeah. I feel like that is the answer.
I mean, that would be ridiculous if that's the case.
Yeah, but Shaq Leonard, in the study with.
I mean, my perception from everything that those of you who know Howie and know the organization have told me is that Howie knows the league way too well.
He does.
To think that zero claims would come in on a player for whom 6 claims came in. That's 6 and 0 are very far apart there. I just can't imagine that Howie didn't know about any of the 6 teams that would be interested, which makes me think that they were willing to lose him. And Sirianni saying that they hoped he would be back. What's he going to say? To that question, no matter what they're thinking, he's going to give the answer that he gave today in the presser to the question, which is that we were hoping he would come back. I mean, I'm sure they were.
Plus, Sirianni gasses him up on Monday's press conference. So, if you're playing the game of we think we're going to try to hide this guy,
why not say that Nick Morrow had a good game instead of Christian Elliss had a good game?
Yeah,
I mean, they would be equally untrue.
Also,
how dare you?
Yeah. They could have cut Nicholas Morrow, by the way.
Yeah.
And he's a vested veteran, so he would not be subject to waivers, and they could have signed him to the practice squad.
Right.
So that's another move they could have made. Howie, it is plausible, by the way, that that they don't think as highly of Christian Elliss as
of course
Wulf does.
Yeah. I mean.
But I do think though. That wasn't just lip service from Nick Sirianni. I do think, or I'm fairly confident based on circumstantial evidence, that they believed that Christian Elliss they wanted Christian Elliss to come back and be with the team today.
I mean, you watch every single defensive snap multiple times.
Yeah, way too many times.
Yeah.
Who would I rather have of those
on
two?
the field? Yeah.
Oh man, this is like the opposite of Sophie's Choice or whatever. I think Christian Elliss is where he belongs, resting in peace with KC2 Hill. They're in the same place spiritually as we were all hoping they would be, and I think we can move on. But that's not for me to decide. All
right. Well, thank you for joining us, Deniz. It's time for you to leave now. That'll be it. All right. Before we get going and actually into the weeds of this matchup, it's time to tell you about a new sponsor of ours.
And an old friend.
Rocket Money, baby. On board with the PHLY Eagles podcast. Now, not only are they a sponsor, but I am a client of Rocket Money. Long time going. And you know what they're very good at is I'm not good at keeping track of not only like all of my subscriptions, like which ones maybe overlap with one that my wife has, like, all of a sudden we realize we're both subscribed to Hulu or something like that.
Really?
Yeah, and then you cancel one. But they do the work for you of canceling these things. And there's one particularly difficult one that I've tried to cancel in the past, a newspaper, and you can't get them on the phone. And it's just impossible. And they went and did it for me. So Rocket Money is fantastic. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills. I can see all of my subscriptions in one place, and if I see something I don't want, I can cancel it with one tap. I never have to get on the phone with customer service. They will even try to get you a refund on the last couple months of wasted money and negotiate to lower your bills for you by up to 20%. All you have to do is take a picture of your bill, and Rocket Money takes care of the rest. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has helped save its members an average of $720 a year with over $500 million in canceled subscriptions. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/PHLY. That's rocketmoney.com/PHLY. rocketmoney.com/PHLY.
And speaking about products that we are customers of, I talk about Wheelhouse every day, and it's not just because I'm doing an ad read. It's because I am a customer there, and it's holiday season. Celebrating the holidays in my house, and I ask my son what he wants, and what does he say? He says cards. And where would I get them? Wheelhouse, because Wheelhouse is the go-to sports card, gift, and apparel shop in the Delaware Valley. Their motto is cards and community, because the love of sports unites us all. They carry all of your favorite card brands like Topps Chrome Baseball and Mosaic Football, as well as t-shirts, hats, and hoodies from brands like Mitchell & Ness, 47 Brand, Junk Food Starter, and Shibe Vintage Sports. If you're looking to grade your sports card collection, Wheelhouse offers PSA grading submissions. They also host tons of different family-friendly events and birthday parties every month. If you stop in either of their stores, there's one in Westchester and one in Wayne. They're open 7 days a week at 11 a.m. And if you use code PHLY, you will get $10 off any purchase of $25 or more in the store. Also, be sure to give them a follow on Instagram at Wheelhouse Cards.
All right. Let's talk Eagles offense against Cowboys defense to start this discussion. Deniz, do you think that the Eagles need to run the ball?
Like ever, you mean? Or?
Was that you holding the sign?
I think it was not me holding the sign. I do enjoy.
If you could stand outside the Novacare complex and hold a sign, what would the sign say? If you could only give them one message. Man,
putting me on the spot. I should have.
I should have.
Tossed this one I would. It would probably have a very small font with a lot of writing on it. Would not be an effective sign for that reason. But yeah, go for it would be a good one for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk run the ball.
By the way, apologies to the audience. My voice isn't so great today because I'm still not recovered from angrily screaming from the stands on Sunday. Emily was yelling louder next to me, so I had to make sure they could hear me over her.
Okay.
And so, I haven't quite recovered.
You call that man yell?
Go for it was one of the things I was yelling during that fourth and 3 punt, but
which Sirianni has not backed off of.
Ridiculous, just ridiculous, and almost objectively incorrect decision.
Ridiculous. Okay.
Yeah. Running the ball.
Yes.
Look, I tweeted earlier this week a list of the Eagles games from the last 2 seasons, 2022 and 2023, ranked by EPA per rush. And the top 9 games were from last year, right? So the running game is not as dominant as it was last season. And one of the things that happens as the early, and some of the offensive linemen said this to the media earlier this week. I mean, you guys, probably heard like Kelce talking about it. Lane Johnson talked about it in his presser, that when the early runs are unsuccessful, the coaches usually stop calling them. Right. And it's obviously a very small sample, and it's something that maybe is unfair to the run game, right? As a concept that's been worked on and practiced all, off season and all week and everything. But the truth is the runs have not been as successful in the early going. Having said that, the Eagles are still 5th in rushing DVOA, 6th in EPA per rush, 7th in rush success rate. But about the early game and early down running, if you take out the first month, when Cam Jurgens and Lane Johnson and Dallas Cowboys were all on the field together. And those are the only games where they were all on the field together all season. The Eagles are 27th in early down rushing success rate when excluding that first month. They were very good in the first month. And you remember that 9-minute drive at the end of the Tampa Bay game, et cetera.
The Vikings game when they just leaned on the same inside zone the whole time. Yeah.
Exactly, over and over again. And by the way, I'm glad you brought up that Vikings game, because there was this viral clip of Mina Kimes and Dan Orlovsky talking about how the Eagles are facing a lot more too high this year, and how one thing that running the ball could do is to attract the extra safety into the box, which is going to open up things for the pass game, and about how the, there were fewer too high defenses last year. That Minnesota game is an interesting counterexample to that. They just stayed in the light boxes that whole time and just kind of let the Eagles run the ball. So, but yeah, so anyway, after that first month, we've seen it just not be as good. Now, the Eagles do run the ball a normal amount. Like, it's not like they've abandoned the run. They're 10th in pass rate over expectation. And honestly, I wouldn't expect a team with these receivers and this quarterback to be much lower than that, right? Like, I mean, are you expecting this team to suddenly become, the 49ers and build the entire offense around the run? I mean, I just don't think that would be,
right. This is Zach's,
received very well.
They've got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. If you're the opposing defensive coordinator, you want them to run the ball.
Right, exactly. Now, this is going to be the first time we've seen Lane Johnson, Cam Jurgens, and Dallas Cowboys all playing together since that first month. I mean, Cam Jurgens went down midway through week 4. That's exactly when the run stats got worse. And then since he's been back, Lane Johnson missed a game, and Dallas Cowboys has missed all the games since he's been back. So that's something to look at.
I think that's well said.
Yeah, that's like a rational take on the running game that I think the city could use right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen these solutions that say, like, well, Jalen's hurt, and you should interrupt me anytime, by the way. Like, I can go on. But
no, that's what you're here for.
I've heard people say, like, run from under center, like, run from the pistol. And those two things have two different answers. Like, one, this team just does not run the ball from under center. Like, that just doesn't exist in this. And the Eagles, when you take out the quarterback sneaks, rank dead last, 32nd, in plays from under center, period, like, let alone running or not running. 2% of the snaps have been from under center when you take out the sneaks. And so it's not suddenly going to get installed now. It's not like they're going to install a whole under center run game now. That clearly wasn't part of the plan. As for pistol, the Eagles have run the ball from pistol 5th most in the league, 44 times, and have had 36% success rate, which is below what they get from the shotgun, and minus 0.15 EPA per rush, which is bad. They've been much better from the shotgun in that too. So it's not like they haven't been doing that. Jordan Mailata said earlier this week that every run play seems like one guy is making a mistake. And I went through the film this week, and oh man, it's like if Kelce gets the safety on that crack toss, or if Zacchaeus blocks the nickel on this one, like, it's gonna go. And there are all these examples where it's just like one guy didn't do the right thing. And Kelce's talked about this. That's the thing with the run game. You need everybody to be perfect. You can't just have the quarterback throw it to A.J. Brown and he makes an awesome play, and it doesn't really matter that there was pressure from the left side or something in a run play. Those things get exposed.
And no, I don't want to turn this into like demystifying data, but while we have you on set here, it is worth demystifying this. We use the term success rate quite a bit here, and it's a metric that we can look at, and it's standardized across the teams. But can you explain specifically why that is helpful in the running game, the rushing success rate?
Yeah, so I mean, if you just look at yards per carry, right? If you get 6 yards on literally every carry, that's going to be 6 yards per carry. And then if you get 60 yards on 1 carry and 0 on 9, that's also going to be 6 yards per carry. So looking at yards per carry is obviously not the right way to do it. Also, a 1 yard run from the 1 yard line is very valuable, right?
Mm-hmm.
They give you 6 points for that.
That's all you got.
And but it's only 1 yard. It lowers your average. I mean, it's silly to talk about it that way. So success rate is a measure of whether you increased your expected points for the drive by that last play. So pretty much any first down is going to be successful. And then a run on first down of usually more than 5 yards, depending on where you are in the field, is going to be successful. And also to give people baselines here. And I think people don't know the baselines usually. And I didn't know the baselines. I had to kind of calculate them myself. Average success rate in the NFL is 43%. Okay, so this isn't like
for run plays or for all
for
plays?
all plays.
Yeah.
For run plays, it's 45.6%, and for rushing plays, it's 38.9%. So we're not quite talking baseball levels here, but the amount to be above average is not great. Like it's not like this isn't like 64 fails or something. It's not like school, right? 38.9% is the average success rate. So when we talk about the Eagles' success rate is 43% on runs.
That's good.
That's good enough for 7th in the league.
And they were 0% this past week. Correct.
0% on all
Running
plays
backs.
other than quarterback sneaks.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I mean, like 11 total plays, 1 quarterback run, and 10 running back runs, and they were all unsuccessful. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what those under center plays that weren't sneaks were, other than the fake sneaks. But
Yeah, so they have had this package out of 21, where it's usually Boston Scott in the backfield with Swift running the jet motion.
That's right.
And the only reason they've run that play is to make it believable that they're going to hand off to the running back to the actual back as opposed to the jet motion guy when they do. And so it worked in Kansas City. They did the for like 2 yards in the first half to Boston Scott, and then out of the same motion they handed it off to Swift. And we remember what happened. That was like one of the biggest plays in that game. Kind of turned that game around.
Now, from your watching vantage point, your opinion, how much of this, aside, everybody's making, it seems like there's one mistake on every run play. If Jalen Hurts was, the athletic player that he was last season and running to the same degree, how much do you think that would be like the panacea for the running game?
I'm getting old, and I have trouble remembering how long ago things were. But I remember a game where Jalen Hurts won the game with a walk-off quarterback draw touchdown in overtime. I don't remember what season or what year what week that was.
Now. Okay.
Like in that game, he seemed fine to me.
Yeah.
He seemed fine to me, even in the Kansas City game. I mean, coming off the bye, I don't think he's looked unhealthy. And all these people who are coming out of the woodwork now and talking about how his best traits are being able to run, and he doesn't have this now, right? I mean, Shield called this out well. You guys talked about it as well, these tropes that come out, unfortunately, in these times. The reason we're hearing all of this come out now isn't because he's not healthy. It's because the Eagles haven't lost in 2 months. And what happens is like they're ready to have these like completely garbage takes, and suddenly they're all coming out, and they're coming out from players like Nick Bosa mentioned something about this.
Well,
they're coming out from people who we're not going to name, and these are coming out now because the Eagles don't lose very often, and they don't know when the Eagles are going to lose again, and they have to get out all these garbage takes during this short week here.
Yeah, but I do want to say though, I don't think it's generalizing or stereotyping or anything of that nature to say like Jalen Hurts is a really effective runner. He's a really good runner, and that he should lean into that part of his game. And we haven't seen him run as effectively during these past few weeks. Now he did, like you said, that quarterback draw. We know it's in him. This is a conversation, but
also the volume of called quarterback runs has definitely decreased. The Kansas City game and in the Buffalo game, it was a little bit more.
But it's not like when his shoulder was hurt last year and they came back and they ran all of the same inside zone runs that they had been all year, except now they didn't have the read element to them.
Right.
This year they have had the read element involved, both in the RPO game where they leave the backside edge unblocked, and also in a lot of the inside zone runs. He's not keeping as many of them. And I always I'll try to figure it out, or if I don't know, I'll ask Fran Duffy or somebody who does know, like whether they think that Jalen made the right read. But the idea there is that like the calls do involve more read than they did when Jalen was injured last year. So like if that's our benchmark, this is not the Jalen is injured playbook. Like it's just not.
No, I don't think it's the Jalen is injured playbook, but I do think it, and this goes back to a major point that Bo had throughout the offseason. I think this is like let's keep Jalen This is the franchise quarterback. Let's not expose him on the run as frequently as in the past. I do think he's mindful about escaping the pocket more. The play when he slipped last week, when I went back and watched it, he could have tucked that and ran. He also could have thrown it. But there were opportunities there, and
it was second down. So I mean, it's not like he had to.
Ridiculous.
But he was sitting in the pocket, and
he waited so long.
I do think
and he's pointing at AJ to run to the other corner of the end zone, and AJ's just all tied up with Ward and didn't move.
Even if it's unsaid, I do think there's an initiative, perhaps initiative's too strong. I do think there's a recommendation to not run as often or as
it's interesting because it's philosophically different than the way that they're handling everything else this season, specifically the defensive line rotation, right? Like it's what we talked about yesterday. All of these things where they are sacrificing the long term for the short term, like let's just try to win this game. They're not doing that with Jalen Hurts.
So the defensive line rotation, by the way, and I know we're on the offense, but just real quick because you brought it up, and I did ask Sirianni about this today. They're sticking to this idea that they're just playing in more close games and they need these guys in high leverage snaps.
It's not true.
Now, that doesn't explain the first 3 quarters of games when it doesn't have to be that way. But I asked...
The first quarter of games.
Yes.
I mean, I looked back at my notes from last season, and the defensive linemen were rotating after 5 plays in the very first drive. Mm-hmm. And that's just not happening this year. I mean, when the other team goes on a 10-play drive to start the game, the D linemen are the same on every single snap. The D tackles will rotate a little bit, but you will not see Brandon Graham come in the game at times until the second quarter.
Yeah, and I asked specifically about Nolan Smith. Why Nolan Smith is not getting more of these snaps? Because Derek Barnett was averaging just more than 12 snaps per game. The Eagles cut him, and ever since, and in the games that Barnett's been absent, so even before when he was inactive, before they cut him, Nolan Smith has only played on average 4 more snaps per game. So it's not as if he's getting those 12 snaps.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And Sirianni said it's not about Nolan Smith. He said these games are tight, and you want the best guys in at the end. Obviously, with Haason and with Sweat, those are the guys that have been our closers, and we want them in that particular case.
And it's his job. It's his job to be the adult in the room.
Nolan Smith has played 83 snaps this season. Patrick Johnson played 213 last season. He was the 4th defensive end in most of the games. 213 snaps for Patrick Johnson, who is on the team this year and has dressed. Yeah. He has dressed for all but 2 games this year and has 0 snaps. So this is a guy who
also somebody who could have been released instead of.
And I will say it's
they had him inactive.
Nobody wanted 48 though.
It's the same defensive line coach. It's the same edge rusher coach.
Yes.
The only difference is the defensive coordinator this year.
Yeah. I think that's the only conclusion you can draw, right? And it's something that's interesting. All right, before we get to this next ad read, Dana, is anything else that's on your mind on this side of the matchup between the Eagles offense and the Cowboys defense?
Oh, about the offense? Well, did you want to talk about like specifically what happened in the first game against Dallas?
Sure.
That could be one way to go. So just as a reminder, I know it was 5 weeks ago, which is exactly long enough that you might have forgotten, but long enough, hopefully short enough that you'll remember these plays when I bring them up. The offense was rolling for the first 3 quarters in that game. Touchdown, punt, touchdown, punt, touchdown, touchdown. 4 touchdowns on 6 drives, getting 20 first downs on 22 series. That is off the charts good. And then it was skewed at the end by 3 famous 3-and-outs that let Dallas keep on coming back and getting close to scoring.
The A.J. Brown jump ball on 3rd down. The fumble. Yeah.
Exactly. The fumble. One of them was a backstop, but yeah, sure. But in that game, there were some beautiful plays. I mean, there was a 4th and 3 15-yard corner route to Dallas Goedert, who's back this game. That's the game in which he got hurt. The play where he got hurt was a 28-yarder on an RPO slide route where he got hurt stiff-arming Marquez Bell. Those kinds of RPOs will be back and more effective with Dallas Goedert back. There was a beautiful 12-yard run by Kenny Gainwell for a touchdown where he leaped into the end zone on a play that was an RPO with a bubble on the backside that took away 3 defenders. The quarterback run threat took away 2 defenders on that play. 2 guys just frozen watching Jalen on the backside, including Micah Parsons. And so that's a play that was beautifully blocked on the front side as well.
That's bad scouting because you got to know when the Eagles get into the red zone, they're going to hand the ball to Kenny Gainwell.
I mean, of course. I mean, Brandon Lee Gouton, shout out,
will
will tell you that they give the ball to Kenny Gainwell on literally every red zone play. Gorgeous 19-yarder to Devontae Smith, maybe the best throw of the year for Jalen Hurts, who I've been told can't read defenses. That was a beautifully disguised cover 2. Looked like press man cover 1. Fran Duffy had a great video breakdown of it. Ball would go to A.J. Brown if he thought it was man. Instead, they back up into a funky cover 2 where everyone's kind of in different positions, and he throws it to Devontae Smith on a beautiful over route on 3rd and 9. That was awesome. There was a jet sweep by DeAndre Swift from on an under center play. And then, of course, Deron Bland, who has 25 pick sixes or whatever, was burned on that stutter go by Devontae Smith, a 20-yard touchdown. So those are the plays that were good. And I thought that in general, Micah Parsons, he did have 1.5 sacks. He beat Mailata one time. He won inside. Remember, that was the only game this year in which Tyler Steen played right guard. And they had Micah Parsons actually lined up over Steen several times. He beat him pretty cleanly one time. But that's, Tyler Steen won't be playing this game. Dallas played about 50% man coverage, which is very high. They're third in the league at 38%. They played 50% that time. They blitzed 7 or 8 times, but the Eagles mostly handled that well. Both of those long Goddard plays I mentioned were against the blitz.
All right.
It's great insight.
There you go. If you want to watch this game on Sunday, you want to head yourself to Arlington. Let's say you're an Ed, DFOP Ed. Well, check out Game Time, because buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. The best recommendation I can give you, the best piece of fact I can give you, Deniz used Game Time to buy his Super Bowl tickets last year.
I did.
So there you go.
And Feldman, me and Feldman. Yeah.
Feldman.
Shout out to Feldman.
Yeah, shout out to Feldman. Unfortunately, the luck has run out on Feldman.
In terms of, because we lost the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
No, it's true. 0-1 in
so
Super
you're
Bowl.
Looking for new friends.
Well, he has to climb to 500 there.
Okay, there you go. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Tickets make great holiday gifts. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. Other side of the ball. We remember from that game 5 weeks ago, CeeDee Lamb going nuts. Jake Ferguson, a big factor. The middle of the field, a problem for the Eagles, just as it was last week. How much of a concern is that for you?
Well, it was interesting. Looking back at that game, I was really wondering what Desai's plan was going to be for CeeDee Lamb, because against Justin Jefferson earlier in the season, there were a lot of, just flat out double teams in man coverage, and also in zone coverage. There was always a safety kind of over Jefferson's side. So I thought maybe we'd see something similar with CeeDee Lamb. Lamb had 11 catches on 16 targets for 191 yards in that game, and Slay sort of followed him around. And he did beat Slay 3 times, so they had they each won some there. And he had that desperation catch at the end of the game as well, so that's 4. The other 7 catches made by CeeDee Lamb in that game were against other people in absolute mismatches, and I thought I was really surprised that the entire game there was one dedicated double team against CeeDee Lamb, and it came very late in the game on that 4th down that they threw to Tolbert that Bradbury broke up.
Right.
That was the only play the entire game in which there was a dedicated double team to CeeDee Lamb. They double teamed Jake Ferguson on the first play of the game. It was a target to Lamb. It was very weird. And I had to watch the film back a few times, and I had to ask Fran about it and stuff. I was like, they're doubling it, and he was like, yeah, I don't understand. So, so the plays that he made, I mean, he cooked Eli Ricks on a beautiful over and back route when the safety is shaded over to the other side. This is early in the game. These are in chronological order. And it's like, why is Eli Ricks suddenly the third down. That's the kind of first game where this was the case. He
was
suddenly.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Roby was out, but
Exactly.
Eli Ricks, they played a lot of big nickel in that game with Sidney Brown as the nickel early on in early downs. And then Eli Ricks, who didn't play slot corner in college, is suddenly third down slot corner specialist against the other team's best receiver. For a Super Bowl contender as a rookie, I thought that was a little. It's been an interesting experience. I think Ricks has a potentially good future, but I mean, this does not seem to be the time or the situations in which to use him. In 2-man coverage, he had a 20-yarder again, beating Ricks on an out. That play was in 10 personnel, so Dallas used a lot of 10 personnel in that game. And the Eagles, for some reason, countered that with regular nickel and 2-man coverage multiple times. What that does is it means you have to have a linebacker covering a wide receiver in man coverage. And we had Zach Cunningham covering Tolbert there, and Tolbert just burned him. Like right off the line, the ball ended up going to Lamb for the 20-yarder, but there were multiple people open. My point here is that there were, like, the side wasn't that sensitive to having Lamb have those mismatches.
He didn't treat Lamb like he
yeah, I mean,
Jefferson.
he beat Zach Cunningham out of the backfield on a Texas route. You're going to say, okay, he's lined up as a running back. They got us on that one. You know, that was clever. You know, the Eagles have used Devontae Smith that way. So let's forgive that one. But then there was another one where he just beats Sidney Brown in man coverage, and you know, in the slot as the big nickel. Just that, you know, you can have Slay follow him inside. You can not play man when you have the big nickel package in. I mean, there are different things you can do to prevent that. He beat Sidney Brown later as well. I just thought that it was not a Jefferson or Travis Kelce even, or Christian McCaffrey even treatment for CeeDee Lamb, and I found that surprising. I would be shocked if he doesn't get that treatment this time.
Yeah, so it was actually comparable to a strategy that Jim Schwartz used against Julio Jones in 2016, which was let Julio get his. We're not going to let anyone else on this team beat us. Like, we're not going to let that secondary receiver go off.
You should triple team Jake Ferguson.
And so that worked well in that they won that game, but it was a close call. Though the Eagles did handle that game, throughout. I think the point that Bo made is an apt one, that they did not have Bradley Roby, and I think the trust level in Bradley Roby is quite high. Bo's gonna. Bo's gonna laugh when I say this, but Bradley Roby's a primetime player, as has been well established.
That's right. This is a primetime game, so these are the only games that he shows up for.
Yeah, these are the Bradley Roby games, if you will.
Yes.
But this is, Dave Zangaro had a good piece today on NBC Sports Philly about how Bradley Roby actually asked for more reps in practice this week because he's expecting to see CeeDee Lamb. So I'm thinking this is going to be a game where you're going to see a lot of Bradley Roby, and they're going to trust. This is why Bradley Roby's here, is to lock down that nickel spot.
I mean, I think that's terrifying if they think that's the solution.
Roby did not look good in the last game. I mean, there were multiple plays where he just was not reacting very well to motion, and everything I'm hearing out of Dallas and watching their last couple of games as well is they're doing a lot more motion than they did before that Week 9 game. So
it was a 425 game
that they're going
in San Francisco. So
all right, last thing on this side of the ball before we get to Goose Wisely, Deniz, the third down defense.
Yeah,
I know you've been tweeting about it a little bit this week. What is jumping out to you there?
Yeah, so in that game, Dallas had 15 third downs. They converted 6 of them, but then they converted 3 more on fourth down. And, just looking at this defense for the season, 47% conversion rate allowed on third down is dead last. But when you include the fourth down conversions, 13 of them for the season, which leads the league, by the way, in fourth down conversions allowed. The Eagles lead the league in fourth down conversions converted and allowed, which is kind of fun.
That's a good bit of
so if you only watch Eagles games, you probably think like teams convert fourth down all the time. My son, who's 5, by the way, anytime he watches any random game,
just for a few more days.
That's right, just for 2 more days. Anytime it's like 4th and 8 on their own 25 or something, he asks me, "Why are they punting? Why are they punting?" Because he's used to,
You've trained him well.
Yeah, exactly. But the rate goes up to 55%, which is just crazy. I mean, like 55% of the time, the opposing team has had a third down against the Eagles. They've ended up converting. Now,
that's insane.
The Eagles defense is 9th in the league at getting to third down. I know Zach wanted me to come up with a different name for that stat, and I haven't been able to. Any suggestions from the chat would be great. So this is the rate at which the team does not give up a first down on the first 2 downs. So getting to third down is what I call it. So the Eagles are
early down defense. I feel like.
Yeah, sure, but not in terms of yards, just
course,
not allowing the conversion. So 9 times. My wife's a demographer. She would call it survival rate, maybe, but I don't want to call it that because that sounds like you die when you give up a first down or something. So ninth in the league at getting to third down. Coaches will tell you. Anytime you ask them, you guys know this, anytime you ask them about third down, they'll tell you it's really about first and second down. It's because we're allowing third and short. So of course we're not going to get out of those. Well, listen to this. This is crazy. I had to check the numbers on this. 93 of the 166 third downs, that's 56% of the time the other team has been in third down. It has been 6+ yards to go. That is not normal. Like the league average in that is in the high 30s. So 6+ yards to go. And of those 93, 33% of those were converted, and that is not normal either. That is not a normal conversion rate on something that long. So it's not that the distances to go are short. In fact, what do you think when you think third down? They're running the ball on 3rd and 1. No, only 14 of the 79 third down conversions against the Eagles have been runs. The other 65 have been passes. I mean, that's like more than 5 a game, where you're standing up in the stands and getting all loud on third down and everything, and then you have to sit back down. It feels like that too, especially at home games. You can really feel that energy gets sucked out of the crowd. Like it would almost be better to just give up a first down on
and what's
on second
missing
down.
is as you talked about those sacks.
Yeah, so I was going to bring this up and credit to Sheil Kapati on Philly Special Pod because he made this point, and it's apt, is that if you want to kind of point a finger on third down, to me, I'm looking at the pass rush. This defense is built around the pass rush. The Eagles are 31st in the NFL, tied for 31st with the Chicago Bears, with 7 third down sacks. Only 7 third down sacks.
And to your point, these are not short yardage situations.
And
plenty of opportunities on 3rd and 6+. Exactly. Yeah.
And then you can say, well, you're skewing these numbers because maybe teams are seeing more third down passes. So let's do percentage sacks per dropback. The Eagles are dead last in the NFL with 4.8 sacks per dropback on third down. So those are damning statistics for this pass rush that is overworked. Now you look at it last year and you say, okay, third down last year, they were number 1 in the NFL in sacks per dropback at 18.2%.
On third downs.
On third downs, okay. Yep. And they were number 1 in the NFL on third down sacks with 32, which was 8 more than the next team. And to also use a thing that Sheil likes to say, the distance between the Eagles at number 1 and number 2, 8 sacks, is the distance between the second place team or the second ranked team, the New England Patriots, and you'd have to go to the 16th ranked team from last year. So that shows you how effective they were at sacking the quarterback last year compared to this year.
No,
and all of this is even more important this week and worrisome this week because in that last matchup, the Cowboys' offensive line really dominated them. And this is like this. We used to go into every week expecting the Eagles to have the advantage on the line of scrimmage, and at least on this side of the ball, that is not the case.
Terrence Steele, the right tackle, the only exception to that. Late in that game, Brandon Graham had 2 sacks from that side. Josh Sweat had the famous one where he was celebrating while they were about to snap the ball. Excellent AJ Brown mic'd up there where he just yells like, "Get your ass back there!" That was great. We were all yelling the same thing. Look. That game, the Dallas offensive line had an incredible game. I mean, I've never seen like that kind of consistent, success from one side of an offensive line, the left side in particular. They were really good. But sacks are a quarterback stat. Sacks are an offense stat in general when it comes to allowing them. And the Eagles have played San Francisco, Buffalo, Miami, Kansas City, Dallas, the Rams. These are all teams that are top 10 in DVOA offense this year. Those are the top 4, the first 4 I mentioned, and then the 8th and the 9th. So that's 6 out of 12 games were against teams that are top 10 DVOA. So all of these defensive numbers are skewed by this. And this is the thing that I'm saying when I don't want to, how much I don't want to say that, the defensive coordinator is the problem here after what I thought about the last defensive coordinator. So, last year, do you know how many games the Eagles played against top 10 DVOA offenses? And do you know who they were? There were 3 games. One was Detroit, week 1, and that didn't go well, by the way. And it's not like we knew that they were going to be that good. Jacksonville, in a game where Trevor Lawrence couldn't hold the ball because it was raining. And then the Giants, believe it or not, finished the season 10th in DVOA. But come on, like, what are we, like, let's be serious. So the point is that,
and that is
until
it all played out in the Super Bowl. Right?
Exactly,
Like,
exactly.
You blame the turf if you want, but like that's the quarterback, that's the offense.
Exactly. And I tweeted last night like points per drive for all the games for the offense and the defense from the last 2 seasons, just so you could see where this season's fit in. And please pay attention to the opponents when you're looking at that. Like, don't just look at how many of the games are from this year. Look at who they're against. I mean, the Eagles have played the 4th most difficult schedule of offenses in the league. If you're going to compare them to Dallas's defense, keep in mind that Dallas has played the 31st most difficult schedule, and this is by EPA per play averages and that kind of thing. So it's a play-by-play metric. Meanwhile, the Eagles' offense has faced the 7th most difficult defenses. Dallas has faced the 22nd most difficult. So when you're comparing the teams, just keep that in mind.
Yeah. So my pushback to that would be, this isn't my son's elementary school that we're grading on in terms of the curve. We're doing Ivy League.
Shots taken in elementary school.
Yeah, he got a plus on an assignment. That's not an A, B, or C. Like, come on. This is the curve.
In kindergarten, I believe.
He's in first grade.
By the way, I grade on a curve in every class that I teach. And I don't understand not grading on a curve.
No, but I'm saying,
I've never understood it.
I'm saying, but I mean, the Eagles are being judged against Ivy League students here, right? That if you're going to win in the postseason, the teams you're going to have to beat are San Francisco and Dallas. And if you win in the Super Bowl, it's going to have to be against the Kansas City or Miami or Baltimore. So
you're
my
saying,
point is that it affects the rankings and the stats right now, but I'm not letting them off the hook because they're playing against good teams when, in essence, in order for them to achieve what this season is about, they're going to have to beat those teams in January and February.
Yeah, I mean, Bo always talks about variance. I feel like I'm still more comfortable knowing that this defense can shut out Miami and Kansas City in the second half.
Well said.
Those are the 3rd and 4th best offenses in the league. And then occasionally, have a game like this last one, then know that it's not going to go well against Mahomes.
Then piling up stats against the teams they were doing against last year.
And decide, try so many different things, so many different coverages, so many different personnel groupings. 7 snaps, a big penny last week. You heard it here first.
That's right.
That was the second game all year in which that had been used. It didn't necessarily
Rashad Penny, another guy who definitely needs to be on the roster. All right, let's talk about FOCO, because FOCO is a leading manufacturer of sports and entertainment merchandise with a product line that includes apparel, accessories, toys, collectibles, novelty items, and more. It's the best officially licensed gear for all sports and fandoms. It's football and tailgating season. Overalls, hoodies, hats, sunglasses, bags, everything you need for a game. FOCO has hooked PHLY up and provided awesome pieces for our sets. FOCO always has our back for Philly sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by using the link in our description. For all non-presale items, use the promo code PHLY10 for 10% off. Saw Dallas Goedert doing an Instagram post with FOCO with his girlfriend.
By the way, Professor Selman's in my head right now because
I'm right here for one thing. You just heard me talking.
As we've talked about, I taught my first course this summer at Colorado State, and I did not grade on a curve. So I'm going to need to reassess that for this upcoming summer. Yeah.
All right. Speaking of hashing it out, let's get to Goose Wisely.
But I have to just two quick things on the defense
please.
I have to get off my chest. The defensive version of the run the ball sign says what?
Blitz.
Exactly. The Eagles defense, when not blitzing, is average 16th in EPA per play, 13th in success rate. When blitzing, you guys want to hear the numbers?
Yes.
32nd in EPA per play,
really?
31st in success rate. And it's not surprising. I mean, they're blitzing Nicholas Morrow, and it's like a slow blitzer you're taking a person out of the middle of the field, and then those inbreakers and whatnot are getting yak, and that's exactly what happened last week against San Francisco on the couple of blitzes.
And it is 5+ rushers, right? So it's not, we don't know if it's
so it includes includes when there's 5 defensive linemen rushing out of a Penny or base, which I hate, by the way. They have this speed Penny package with 3 DNs and 2 defensive tackles, and they're stunting and doing all this stuff. I do not understand that at all. I would rather have 1 extra person in coverage there, because those guys almost always end up I'm not exaggerating. They almost always end up running into each other when they do those stunts.
It takes too long.
It takes too long. They run into each other and fall down, and there's 1 less person in coverage. And it just, the numbers will show it hasn't worked. Small sample, but the film really shows it. So I wish they'd stop doing that.
Things, or?
I did. What was the other one? The other thing is that the early down success is making me hope this is like the statistical analyst in me says that there are way more early downs than late downs. I saw someone in the chat say the third down stat sounded noisy. Let's just hope that's what it is. There are way more first downs, obviously, than there are third downs, right? Way more second downs and third downs as well. And so the fact that this team has been good on that very large sample of first and second downs makes me hope that the third downs are noisy and that will be the reversion.
Okay. All right, Zach. I'm up 7-4 in Goose Wisely. I will go first here.
And the season's getting it's like if you play fantasy football, you see there's not much time left, right? So there's not much time left in this, but the playoffs are coming as well. Maybe those will count for 2. We can discuss.
We'll see. Yeah. All right.
Wait, real quick. The Eagles injury report is out.
Oh, this is a fun game we played last week and did very poorly on.
The injury report.
Give us a name.
I mean, do you just want me to say?
We did this exact same thing last week, and now we have to
Julio
do the same
Jones.
way. Questionable.
No, has no injury status. Okay. Grant Calcaterra.
No injury status.
No injury status. Fletcher Cox.
No injury status.
No injury status. Zach Cunningham.
No injury status.
No injury status. Dallas Goedert.
No injury status.
No injury status. Darius Slay.
No injury status.
No injury status. Jack Stoll.
Questionable.
No injury status. So all 53 players
and highly trusted.
All 53 players are healthy enough to play on Sunday against the Dallas Cowboys.
It's going to be really nice to have Goddard back because Jack Stoll was open on 2 corner routes in this last game, just wide open. Alberto was wide open on a sail route. Jalen was never going to throw the ball to those guys. He just wasn't looking right at him. He just wasn't going to. Sirianni answered those questions with Coach Speak to protect his quarterback. He said that Jack Stoll wasn't part of the read on a nothing corner combination. Like AJ was clearly just sitting there to let the corner develop, and he said he was a clear out. I mean, I don't think the truth serum would give the same answer. So
also, right. Bo, I want you to know that in honor of Logan O'Hop, I am at the service of our audience today. That if Shohei Ohtani signs during the remainder of the show, I will
hasn't happened
chime
yet?
in. It has not, but this flight from Los Angeles or South Florida, John Wayne Airport, I believe, to I'm sorry, not South Florida, Southern California to Toronto is like the most tracked flight in the history of the internet. I've seen so many people I follow mentioning this flight going from John Wayne Airport to Toronto. So if it's just like a random Southern Californian on this flight, it's a pretty funny story.
I thought you were coming in with the actual
news.
You didn't need to break in with, if this news happens, then I will give it to you 55 minutes into the show.
Yeah.
You could have just waited to see if it happened and then jumped in.
We can play overtime today. That's fine. Is there a hard out in a minute?
No, I'm just saying you didn't have to tell us what you were going to do if it happens. That's okay. All right. My first one for you is that Chris Collinsworth at some point during this broadcast says that Dak Prescott should be the MVP.
Okay.
Or he makes the case for Dak Prescott as MVP. Or Shaq Leonard at some point in this game leaves with injury.
I'm going with Collinsworth makes the Dak MVP case. Can you do a quick 15 seconds on Collinsworth giving the MVP case?
Oh, man. Shield loves doing this.
Shield was the Collinsworth guy.
Yeah, Shield does the Collinsworth. I'm not going to.
All right, your Collinsworth needs some work.
Yeah,
okay.
I'll work on my Jack Collinsworth, and I'll come back to you.
Okay, all right.
All right, over to you.
Okay, my first one here is, boom, boom, Shaq Leonard tackles or total touchdowns in this game.
Okay, so I think you've forgotten the precise
way that
this game works.
Yeah.
So it's I'm either taking Shaq Leonard will have more tackles than total touchdowns in this game, or there are more.
It's only the 12th time you're playing.
Yeah, sorry, I did this at 2:51 today.
It took 3 years for Zach.
I was coming from the locker room. I was making this over unders actually, and all of mine are like this. So which is greater, Shaq Leonard tackles?
No, that is not how it works.
Okay. Shaq Leonard has more tackles.
Zach, this is like the 12th time.
Here you go, Bo, okay? Shaq Leonard has more tackles than total touchdowns in this game, or there are more total touchdowns in this game than Shaq Leonard tackles?
I'm going to say total touchdowns in the game is more than Shaq Leonard tackles. What's your expectation for Shaq Leonard's role?
Yeah, I think Shaq Leonard's going to have a role, but not an every down role. So I think
are these solo tackles?
Total tackles.
Okay. That might have been the right pick, but
By the way, you understand what I'm asking here. This is
but
like,
it's not really the way the game is supposed to be played, but that's okay.
I just love that people are writing 5 in the chat. That's awesome.
All right, for
can't
you,
win. I can't win.
Dallas Goedert finishes as one of the 2 leading receivers on the Eagles in this game, or a Cowboys player finishes the game with more than 1 sack, so 1.5 would count.
Dallas Goedert finishes one of the top 2. Now, is this top 2 on both
on the
teams?
Eagles? On the Eagles.
Okay, yeah, Dallas Goedert.
Okay.
And so Dallas Goedert's back, and I think he's gonna have a definite role. Devontae Smith has been hot recently. AJ Brown had that big game last week, but I think they're gonna look to Goedert, and I like that matchup that Goedert has this week. Although I would definitely watch, if Deron Bland is on AJ Brown, or if Deron Bland is on Devontae Smith. He is known to be aggressive. He does have the interceptions, but he is known to be aggressive. So I would pay attention to whether the Eagles try some double moves there to try to get him to bite. Who
do you think among the other wide receivers plays the most snaps in this game? Who do you think plays the 3rd most snaps?
Quez
wide
Watkins.
receivers? I think so too.
Yeah.
I think the offense looks better with Quez there.
It was Quez last week.
Yeah. And I do think that there's a lot of respect in the Eagles building for Al Harris, the former Eagle defensive back, who's the defensive backs coach for the Cowboys, who also played a similar style where he was aggressive on the ball.
There you go.
AJ Brown's streak, the famous streak, was broken by the last Dallas game when he had the 125 in all those games. Deron Bland and Gilmore stayed on their sides against the Eagles, but last week against Seattle, Metcalf was kind of getting a lot of catches against Bland, and they switched so that Gilmore was following him. I thought that was interesting.
That was interesting. Go ahead.
So, by the way, this is a game that Bo created, okay? And I understand the 2 outcomes here. What I am doing is I'm putting a little difference. I'm doing a thematic goose wisely that all of mine are over unders. Okay, so it's an or.
You can't retroactively try to explain that you were doing something different when the truth is that you did it 3 minutes before the show started and sort of forgot how the game worked.
No, look, I'm going with something different. We haven't done a DraftKings ad in a few weeks, but I want this to be an homage to DraftKings, like the over under. So okay, so this one here, CeeDee Lamb receiving yards. There's more CeeDee Lamb receiving yards than Eagles rushing yards, or there are more Eagles rushing yards than CeeDee Lamb receiving yards.
See, now Deniz can tell you that what you are doing by virtue of doing this is you are like running up the score on how the count is, because every single one of yours, one is definitely going to hit.
Yes.
Unless they're exactly the same.
Yes.
Right.
Although Professor Selman did say earlier this year that mine were not hitting at all. Like I was proposing things that
you were going swooper style and just saying things that were never going to happen.
Yeah. So now I'm actually taking my coaching. I'm listening to Professor Selman. I'm taking my notes. And my week 14 is better than my week 4.
I'm going to say. I'm going to say Eagles rushing yards. I feel like we've talked before about how sometimes the Eagles, it feels like they build their game plan around like the rabbit-eared reaction to the talk around town. And I feel like there's so much talk about the running game this week, and this matchup is built for them to lean into it. Getting back Dallas Goedert, as you talked about, this is that first time when those 3 guys are all playing together. I feel like they are going to lean into the rushing yards. I also feel like they will have a better plan for CeeDee Lamb, like you talked about, Deniz, maybe any plan at all. Yeah. And so give me the Eagles rushing yards over the CeeDee Lamb receiving yards.
That was a good one.
That was a good one.
Thank you.
I like that you said it was a good one that you gave yourself. All right. For me, Dallas's 3rd down conversion percentage is greater than the Eagles' red zone conversion percentage, or the Eagles lose the coin toss.
This is a really good one. Okay.
That's debatable.
So the coin toss is 50-50. Okay. That's an ACC education or a Big East education when I was there.
That's good.
Okay.
No, I made sure to say because the Eagles will get to call it because they're the road team. So it's the Eagles losing. It's not the Cowboys winning.
So 3rd down is very seldom like really high, or I mean, it can be really low, but you're typically, within, plus or minus like 20% of 50, right? So,
Sure. Yeah.
whereas red zone, you can get 100, like you can get 100, you can get 80. So, I'm gonna go with the Eagles lose the coin toss here, because I actually think there's a greater chance that the red zone's higher than the third down percentage, based on just the way these things tend to end up.
Okay.
Eagles had 12 straight touchdowns in the red zone before those first 2 fails last week, but they did have 2 red zone touchdowns after that last week, so it was a normal game in red zone. So red zone's been generally very good recently.
All right, go ahead.
So my next one, Micah Parsons' sacks and quarterback hits are greater than Haason Reddick's sacks and quarterback hits, or Haason Reddick's sacks and quarterback hits are greater than Micah Parsons' sacks and quarterback hits.
Now Reddick has the matchup on Terrence Steele. I'm going to take Micah Parsons, and the Eagles have generally done a very good job against Micah Parsons, but Micah Parsons isn't having to play 90% of the snaps, so he's going to have fresher legs. Speaking of fresher legs, we should mention, which we haven't talked about, but last week we talked about the Niners getting that extra rest. The Cowboys get it again. Kind of weird that the Eagles have to play back-to-back games with that being the case against 2 of the best teams that they play, but c'est la vie.
It's only the 2 most pivotal games to determine the number 1 seed, but we're not going to complain about that.
I think behind the scenes, the Eagles are pretty miffed about the schedule, and I think that I'm curious to see when we do our show in. Well, the schedule comes out in May, like May 12th or thereabouts. I'm curious to see if the Eagles get some favors in next season's schedule, like some things they request or some favorable things, because I think that I think there are people on Park Avenue on 345 Park who are aware of this Eagles schedule.
Lurie has been an owner for almost as long as Jerry Jones. I mean, the one time that he complained about Dallas getting never having to go on the road for a Thursday night game, it immediately got shut down, and we haven't heard about it since. So it's a little annoying that he's not able to use all of those years of
of clout. By the way, good piece today by Mike Sando of The Athletic, ranking the owners and kind of putting wins and losses to the owners. I thought that was a good piece.
Where did Jeffrey rank?
He ranked number 10 in there, I believe.
In total wins or in
no,
percentage?
in the rankings of the owners. He did owner rankings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, last one for you, Zach. The Eagles lose by double digits, or Julio Jones's receiving yards are greater than the time of your post-game appearance.
So the time.
Let's pretend that it's only going to be the hour that matters. So this could be an 11-ish. This could be.
And we're
1.
talking Eastern time, right?
Yes.
Okay, so. That's important, though, because I'll be on Central Time.
We need Zach with a phone, in the locker room in the postgame.
I agree.
Are you guys allowed to do that?
And that
would be awesome.
That would be great, because it would bring in the possibility of what everybody has been asking for, which is more nudity on the show.
We are not allowed to broadcast live from the locker room.
Gotcha. Okay.
I can step outside and call or FaceTime, but there's no live feed from the locker room.
Got it.
Number one, and
He's a backdrop.
Every reporter has a different strategy. I'm not big on holding up the phone when I'm talking. I'm trying to do it more now, because we are working for a video out, a digital outlet here. But my interviews, I prefer them to be much more conversational. And I always find when you're holding up a phone and talking, it's not conversational. It's much more performative. So especially Bo knows this, like when you're working the post-game locker room, you want the guy to be at ease. You don't want him to feel like he's giving you the same stuff as everyone else. You want him to just be shooting the shit after a game.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It was just I hadn't really thought it through either. I just kind of.
So Eagles. So to answer this question, time of my post-game appearance. So the game is 8.
It's likely a 12, but it could be a 1. It could be an 11.
Okay, so Julio's receiving yards is, I don't know how many receiving yards. I guess I'll go Eagles lose by double digits here.
Okay.
Because I don't think Julio's going to have a big receiving yards game.
And so what is he going to have a big game of?
What's that?
He's not going to have a big receiving yards game. Is he going to have a big, kicking game.
Well,
Julio's coming.
There's going to be a Julio game, and we're going to be doing a show this summer where you're just going to casually say, "Oh, the Julio game," and I'll say, "Yeah, the Julio game," and it will be part of the Philadelphia vernacular.
That is so much more likely to be in the negative connotation than it is in the positive.
It'll be like,
hopefully things go well, and it'll be Week 18 against the Giants. We'll be catching touchdowns from Tanner McKee. That could happen.
I mean, I think there's going to be a big play that Julio Jones makes. And
I do think that if we're referring to a game as the Julio game, I feel so much more likely that it's he dropped a pass or
through gritted teeth, you are going to say, "You're right. The best receiver."
Well, you must not know me very well.
The best, you would not say you were right. You would find a way to rationalize it. But the best receiver of our generation made a play that
the Eagles signed Calvin Johnson. That actually sort of tracks with the rest of their
shifted the outcome of
roster building this season.
of the game. And so, Julio is coming. I'm not that. I never said
he's
when.
an eligible receiver on the team. It would stand to reason that at some point he's going to do something, but it hasn't happened.
Well, I'm not
other
saying
than that one touchdown.
I'm not saying Covey is coming. I'm saying Julio is coming.
I think Covey's probably coming more than Julio is. All right, last one for you.
Okay, last one from me. Nolan Smith has more snaps than Jake Elliott has points, or Jake Elliott has more points than Nolan Smith has snaps.
I'm going to take Nolan Smith snaps, even if it's 12 or 13, which would be a season high. I think that's probably likely to be a little bit more than the Elliott points.
You're not expecting a big field goal game.
Yeah, I mean, all I'm doing is just guessing 50-50 on red zone chances, which are usually better than 50-50. So I feel like the Eagles defense is going to be on the field a lot in this game. So I'll take Nolan Smith. All right. Before we close it out with we got to do our doubles here.
Yes.
Do you have one in mind for you?
Yeah. So I actually liked the first one, the Collinsworth MVP thing. I mean, I think that's going to be that's look. You're appealing to the general fan. Dak Prescott's been in the media today he was on the Today Show. I believe he had an interview with Craig Melvin on the Today Show. I saw there was an ad with Dak Prescott. He's getting this MVP buzz. It has to be worked in somehow. Now he doesn't have to say he's going to have to be the MVP, but Chris Collinsworth mentions MVP and Dak Prescott. Yeah,
but he has to affirm the case. He can't just say he is an MVP candidate.
Okay, but so does he have to say he's my MVP, or does he have to say?
No, but he has to at least talk about
why he's an MVP candidate. Yeah. Okay.
The most likely thing, he's going to make a a play, and he's going to say, "This is why people are saying." And he's not going to say he's not going to be the one. I think that'll count.
Yeah. I always like a Chris Collinsworth. He's someone who returned calls. So give him credit.
Big flex.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the Eagles rushing yards over the CeeDee Lamb receiving yards. I'm leaning into that rabbit-eared game plan. All right. Before we get into the close this out with the Crystal Ball League predictions, Deniz, you talked about it last week. Mm-hmm. That if the Eagles lost these two games, everybody would be saying that they are no longer in first place in the division. The standings will read that way, but that may not be the case. Where do we stand now? Tiebreaker wise, standings wise, the stakes of this game.
Yeah, I heard on WIP yesterday someone said, if the Eagles lose this game, they're going to lose control of the division. And, that is, again, as I said last week, that is not true. If the Eagles lose this game, and I'm going to knock on wood here because I do not want that to happen, then Dallas will appear to be ahead of the Eagles in the division standings. That's because they will have the same record, tied head-to-head, and Dallas will be 4-1 in the NFC East. The Eagles will be 3-1 in the NFC East. Obviously, once those games are played, and if they both win out, they would both be 5-1, and then it would go to record versus common opponents, which would be tied as well. And then it would go to NFC record, which the Eagles would win. And that's because all of Dallas's losses are to NFC teams, whereas the Eagles lost to the Jets, which is obviously an AFC team. And so the Eagles would win the tiebreaker at 14-3. The Eagles could lose the tiebreaker to Dallas if both teams drop a game after. And the Eagles drop within the division, for example, obviously. Or if Dallas loses to Detroit, which is an uncommon game, and the Eagles lose to somebody else, then Dallas would win the common opponent's tiebreaker. So it's not.
Okay.
So
it's
the
not
Eagles
as
have
easy as
not
saying
clinched
right.
the tiebreaker, but in the 14-3, 14-3 situation, so Dallas wins this game and then both teams win out. In that situation, the Eagles would win the division. So the Eagles would still control their own fate for the division, even with a loss. And let's look on the bright side. What would happen if the Eagles win? First of all, they could clinch a playoff spot, for those of you who care about that kind of stuff. Seattle loss, Rams loss, Green Bay plus Minnesota losing, or Green Bay plus Detroit losing. Any of those 4 things, the Eagles would clinch this week. That doesn't really matter. More importantly, the Eagles would obviously guarantee the tiebreaker over Dallas, head-to-head, right? Like, we know this. That would mean that any combination of 2 Eagles wins and Dallas losses in the remaining 8 games would win the Eagles the division. So the division would basically be over, obviously. But also, this is not as obvious, the Eagles would virtually guarantee the tiebreaker over the Detroit Lions in that situation, because this is a common game with Detroit, and it would guarantee that the Eagles don't lose the common opponent's tiebreaker. They could tie the common opponent's tiebreaker, but then they would almost definitely win the strength of victory tiebreaker, like over 99% chance. And so, and I do track those myself, and I can tell you that there is a very small possibility Detroit wins it, but it's not going to happen. So winning this game would basically guarantee tiebreakers over Dallas and Detroit, which would essentially mean that the rest of the season, realistically, would be all about, is it the 1 seed or the 2 seed?
Which is
huge.
Which is obviously huge, yes. And obviously we know that San Francisco has the head-to-head over the Eagles, and also the 3-way tie, San Francisco, Detroit, Eagles. If it came down to that, that would also go to San Francisco. The head-to-head game does not matter in that 3-way tie, so there was a world in which the Eagles could have won it. But unfortunately, San Francisco has 2 AFC losses. They lost to Cleveland and Cincinnati, so they would actually have the best NFC record if the teams all end in a tie.
And for those who are curious, San Francisco has Seattle this weekend at home. Their remaining schedule is at Arizona, home against Baltimore, which is a tough game, at Washington, home against the Rams to end the season.
Yeah, that
hopefully
game
again in fucking guts these guys again.
There you go. All right, Zach. Well, Deniz, do you want to give a prediction or?
Wait, real quick, by the way, we have a great promotion right now.
Yes.
On allphly.com.
We've signed Shohei Ohtani.
Our diehard tier. Look at that. It's $59.99. It's typically $79.99. It basically pays for itself. You get outstanding content. That exclusive content like a Bo's sermon yesterday. Behind there, I'm gonna have a Q&A tomorrow night with a prominent Eagle who factors into something in the news tomorrow night. That's your tease. And
I'm very excited about that.
That's going to be that's also going to be for the diehard tier. But I mean, all the Philly coverage, like Derek Bodner's analysis, and Kyle Neubeck and Charlie O'Connor. We have outstanding coverage that you can find for the diehards. In addition to that, you get a shirt, you get a great box, gift package there. And this is a rare sale. It's not one of these things that if you don't act on it now, you're going to have it in 3 months or 4 months. We don't do these diehard sales often, so act on it now. $59.99 for a yearly membership.
Did you want to give a prediction?
I'm not going to give a prediction this week after what happened last week.
Zach?
Yes, so I don't want to seem reactive, and I want to preface this by saying before the season, when we did the wins and losses, I predicted a loss to the Dolphins as one of the losses. I predicted a loss to the Cowboys on the road as one of the losses. Since we've done this show, the only game that I predicted them losing was the Dolphins, and that followed a loss to the Jets, right? So I don't want it to seem as if the only time that I'm picking losses are when the Eagles lose and like I'm just playing, I'm reacting to what just happened. This is a tough place to play. Dallas has won 14 in a row for a reason. I've been talking since March that Dallas is a legitimate Super Bowl contender, and you're seeing that right now. Like Dallas is awesome. They're a good team. Dak's hot. They have weapons. They have a pass rush. Obviously, we saw they were in the game in Philly. This is a tough spot. The Eagles haven't won there since 2017. I think the Eagles are going to respond with a better game than they played against San Francisco. I think this is a team that's pissed off. I think this is a team that wants to show that last week was a blip. I don't think this is like the Seattle game in 2014. I think this is more comparable maybe to the New Orleans game. The the San Francisco loss. I don't think it's like the Seattle game. I think it's more comparable to the New Orleans game. But that New Orleans game, by the way, they did not run the table. I think they won 5 of their next 6 games in 2018. There was a loss in there. And the loss for the Eagles for this one is going to be Sunday night in Dallas. Tough spot. Like you said, Dallas has more rest. The Eagles are in the middle of this gauntlet. They got to travel there. Now, they are healthier going into this, and they get Dallas Goedert back. And I think it's going to be close. It's a 3.5-point line. I think 52-point over-under. I am going with Dallas Cowboys 28, Philadelphia Eagles 26.
Oh, splitting it. So the Eagles beat the spread.
Eagles cover
28-26. Is that like a game-winning field goal?
For the Cowboys to get the 28?
Yeah.
No, the
Probably
Cowboys
not,
scored
yeah.
4 touchdowns.
They haven't missed a field goal, right?
Yeah, Brendan Aubrey's been playing well for them. I think that the Eagles, this might be a game where they settle for field goals. It might be more of a Jake Elliott game, and we're kind of asking, why didn't you either finish in the red zone
more snaps
or some of those third downs? I expect Dallas Goedert to have a big game. I think one of the receivers tops 100 yards, but not both of them. I know that's not much of a bold prediction, but I think this is a big game for Jalen Hurts, and I'm curious to see how he responds. I don't think he played well last week against San Francisco, and I think a lot of the conversation has been, well, I shouldn't say a lot of the conversation when there's been national analysts who are ripping on him, but I'm focused more on the local conversation. Local conversation doesn't necessarily go for like the let's just talk about the quarterback and make outlandish statements. The local conversation has been more focused on the defense. I don't think it's been as focused on the fact that Jalen did not play as well as he needed to play. So I want to see how he responds going back to Texas. It's gonna be a great game. I look forward to being on the post-game show discussing it.
Yeah, I think I am guilty of this too. And like you think of this guy's, and there's not like week-to-week variance. Like you can have a good day at your job and a bad day at your job. And Jalen Hurts had a bad day at his job last week.
Speak for yourself. Yeah.
Okay. I think that there's a lot to like about this Eagles team. I think they should be able to get back to running the ball. They can't be any worse on defense this week than they were a week ago. Unfortunately, the organization is going down the drain, as evidenced by the waiving of Christian Elliss. And, when you sell your soul, the devil comes to collect.
Ooh.
And the Cowboys are going to win this game 45-17.
Wow.
That's just the comeuppance that you get for doing what the Eagles did to Christian Elliss. So sorry to say that's how this is going to play out on Sunday. But we're going to be here to talk about it before and afterwards on the PHLY Eagles pregame and postgame show. We are here, I think, 7:55, half an hour before kickoff on Sunday night, and then live after the game with Jamie Lynch joining me. Zach is going to be there in Arlington. Any big Arlington plans?
I don't get into late. I was debating whether to do Dallas or Fort Worth. Dallas would have allowed me to go to the Kennedy Museum, which I have gone to a number of times. I don't think it's changed much since the last time.
Are you getting more every time you go?
What's that?
Are you getting something new every time?
Well, there's always something to learn. If you're through learning, you're through, right?
Give me 5 seconds on who you think shot him.
Oh, I mean, it's fair. I mean, I think Lee Harvey Oswald was a solo gun.
There used to be a museum right near there called the Conspiracy Museum, and it was fantastic. I just remember we visited Emily's family who's from that area.
Oh yeah, okay.
And I thought that the Conspiracy Museum was very fun.
I've been to both college campuses, TCU and SMU.
No doubt, yeah.
So it's not as if there's a college campus. Okay. But yeah, this is a business trip. I am in and out and looking forward to being down there.
All right.
I know you need to wrap. Just one really quick thing.
Go ahead.
Just Jalen Hurts rarely lets us get inside his head, right? You cannot tell what he's thinking usually. Monday night game, week 2 in 2022 against the Vikings. He was asked, what are you thinking about this game or whatever? And he said, we all remember the last time we were on Monday Night Football. I haven't forgotten what happened. And I had to look up, what is he talking about? And he was talking about week 3 in Dallas in 2021, the 41-21 loss. And that is the only time that Jalen Hurts in this, I guess he played at the end of 2020 as well, but that is the last time that Jalen Hurts started in Dallas. There is no way that if he's remembering Monday night, that he's not remembering the last time he started in Dallas, and I think he's going to come out extra motivated for this one.
All right.
Good note to end on.
That'll do it for the PHLY Eagles podcast. For Julia and Steve Wulf and all of us here at PHLY, for Deniz and Zach, we wish Evren and Casey Wulf a happy early birthday. Happy birthday party weekend. We'll talk to you on Sunday. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.